our morning here. And today we're going to be presenting, our topic today is going to be supervision on the go and the implications for counseling educators and counseling educators and training. So I'm just going to introduce myself real quick, and then I'll have Dr. Mwendwa introduce herself and Nils as well. So,
I'm going to go ahead and start the files.
Okay.
Can everybody see it on display mode?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So again, thank you for joining us this morning or afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Maria Moore, and I'm a licensed mental health counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. I live in the great state of Washington, and I've been working for the Department of Veterans Affairs, so I work with trauma clients, and I'm super excited to be here this morning. I'm amazed and wonder at the how we could connect in all different places through the use of technology. So I'm excited about our topic, and I'm excited that you have joined us. Thank you so much.
I am Nils Palma, and I am a doctoral student at Liberty. I currently am a student trainee working here in Georgia, and I work with low socioeconomic families, so I see a number of trauma as well as other traditional, more common traditional mental health problems too.
Thanks, Nils and Maria. My name is Joy Mwendwa. I'm an assistant professor at Liberty. I teach both online as well as residential. So we're in Virginia, state of Virginia. And along with my colleagues, I'm really excited about this topic. Thank you for making the time to be with us. And we're actually curious, if you don't mind, I don't know if there's a chat somewhere, if some the folks who are on could maybe just introduce themselves briefly and let us know maybe where you are, and are you a counselor educator in training, and even perhaps what has interested you in joining us this afternoon. So what's your interest in the topic? I don't know if we would see that on the chat or.
I can jump in. Can you hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Dr. Christy Eldridge, and I'm one of the faculty at the Chicago School. And I also do supervision in a private practice. So I was just really interested to hear what you all had to say, and I was excited to see some new presenters that I haven't met or heard from before. So glad that you all are here presenting with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
So my name is Natasha. I'm actually the room monitor for this presentation. I'm a student at the Chicago School, a graduate student in the clinical mental health counseling program. Hopefully one day I'll get to use this as a supervisor. So thank you.
Thanks, Natasha. Thank you. And do we have any more? Can't tell from our, anybody else? All right. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. And certainly there's a portion of our session that's interactive. And so we hope that we can continue to interact, please ask questions, or we're all learning together in this process. So thank you.
So thank you again. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Mwendwa, for that. I just wanted to go over the session overview. And this morning we did our introductions already. We're going to talk about related definitions and statistics, benefits, and current software. And then some of my experience, and then Nils' experience and Dr. Joy's experience in the online world and how that has impacted us. Maybe both positive and negative, and then best practices and implications. So some of the reason that personally for me that I was really interested in this topic was because I'm an online student, and I was an online student for my master's degree and now for my PhD in counselor education supervision. And so the whole process has been amazing, and to see that we can be CACRIP accredited, that we have value, and the amazing thing to be able to connect with my supervisors online. I mean, it's like face to face, but in different locations. So I really appreciated that. So, so this is amazing. So look at the statistics now. We're talking about the CACRIP online programs. Right now there's 785 online master's programs that are CACRIP accredited and 85 doctoral programs. And you know, this is not the end. This is just the beginning of what the future is going to look like in a few years from now. More and more programs are getting accredited. There's just the online, more schools are becoming online, having online programs. So I think that for us, in order for us to be viable in the future, we're going to need to get on board and really educate ourselves and help to educate the future educators and counselors that are coming on board so that they are able to help other people as well. So this is where we're going, and so we need to get on board with that. And please, if you have any questions, just let us know, and we will do our best to help and to answer those questions. And some of our definitions. So clinical supervision, as defined by Bernard and Goodyear, says it's an intervention provided by a junior colleague to a junior colleague by a senior member of a profession with the goals of developing the juniors' functioning and monitoring their development process via the services offered. And so this is the main definition of supervision. And now with the online concept, or the virtual supervision, it is the use of electronic mediums to provide face-to-face live clinical supervision, which provides immediate feedback, just like if the person was right there sitting next to you. The supervision uses cloud-based resources to allow supervisees and supervisors to access material at different times without immediate feedback. So, and Bernard and Goodyear said the definition of clinical supervision is the same as the main supervision. It is just with a different medium. And so, again, as we move forward, we're going to get on board and continue to do quality supervision with our students and with those clinical counselors who are trying to get supervision, and continue to provide that ethical and help the counselors to become productive and be positive supervisors themselves, and clinical counselors, and then professionals in our profession. So it's important that we do reach out and do that. And more definitions. So in the age of technology, you know, and I wasn't born in the age of technology. I'm a little bit older than that. You know, I still remember using the encyclopedias. So, but there are two types, right? So we have a digital native. So that is one who is born into and speaks the native language of the internet, video games, and computers. So these are our younger generation of people that if you go on the street, you see that everybody's hooked to their phone, and they're very connected to the technology of today. And so then we also have the digital immigrant, that would be me. Right? That is me. I had to kind of learn the slow way and the process. And there's even some things that I don't get into, like Instagram or you know, other things that the natives, that's what they're into. And when I was reading on this, they said that Facebook is for the immigrant, not the natives. So
that's right.
The digital immigrant is one not born into the digital world, but has adopted different aspects of technology. And again, this is that would be me, and really learning to adapt those means so that we are able to be effective as our time continues to change and we become more and more technical and technically advanced.
Hey, thank you so much, Maria. Is there any questions at this time? Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the digital world. And I always have protested these two divisions because I came of age at a time when computers were being introduced into the mainstream. So in 1981, when I was working on a thesis for my Master of Divinity, I said, wow, this is great. And I bought into my first computer. So I grew up with them, if you want to say that. My daughters, all three of them, grew up with computers in the homes, starting in the late 80s as they hit elementary school, middle school, 90s. So they are true digital immigrants, and all of them have gone into careers within the field. But what I wanted to talk about is a little bit more about programs, and I would like to have feedback from those who are listening that what programs have you used for supervision? Are you familiar with any programs? Do you have any preferences? Well.
Oh, hi. Yep. Sorry, I was trying to get to my mute button. This is Dr. Eldridge again, and it's a little dark in my office. So we've used a couple different programs, virtual programs, including BlueJeans and Zoom and VC. As far as the the format or the meeting room goes, I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
But,
yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so we've found that there's a lot of similarities amongst them, and also learning what works and what doesn't as we upgrade or make adaptations to find the right program for our supervision.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Eldridge. Okay, I just want us to think about this. The ACA Code of Ethics was written in published in 2014, and it talks in paragraph F2C about the ethical use, of course, of supervision and supervision requirements when they happen online, technologically. And it talks about having the confidence and the knowledge to use the equipment when you're the supervisor, as well as the ability to provide confidentiality for the supervisees as well as for the clients. And what we're going to be looking at next is very similar to what Dr. Eldridge said. We have found that these are some of the most common programs that are in use today that people rely for online supervision. What's interesting about them is that we normally don't use the telephone very often, and yet we think about telephone as a secure means. But technically, our regular telephones, especially if we're using cell phones, are subject to intercept by anyone who wants to spend a $20 to $30 fee to buy the right equipment. It no longer takes a highly sophisticated James Bond type spy to get that. So we have to think about confidentiality, and one of those issues is the telephone. So we move to others that are better, face-to-face. They provide us audio, they provide us visual, and we are able then to also share files. We have the real live view of what the client or the supervisee is saying, and we're able to view it in real time and work with that. And yet, I need to take you back to a thing called HIPAA, and another one that you probably have never heard of before called HITECH. HITECH was originally passed in 2009, and it is, unless you're in the computer industry or have had to deal with contracts for your corporation, something that as counselors we never hear about. HITECH is a requirement that is enforced by a national organization that Congress established and funded to take care of making sure that HIPAA requirements are met online. So anytime that we go online and we begin to talk about clients, anytime we give any personal identifiable information that is any PHI, guess what? We are entering HIPAA territory. And whether we show the face or not, if the name is given of the client, or if we get into a tense situation where the student has to bring out some issues that could be deemed confidential, HIPAA is at play, and HITECH is the program that the government has to ensure that that information remains viable. And thank you, Dr. Eldridge, because you added a few more to the list of what we had here. But in essence, as you said, if we use the programs, we're not going to see any technical difference between them. We're going to see that they all tend to work very much the same and that they all very much do the same things. Part of this, the issue is when you look at each and every one of them, and I am referencing the HIPAA journal. You can go online and browse through it and learn more. It addresses how the technical aspects of the system for regulating this. I'm looking at, it's under Title 13, how it all affects that. And here's the problem. Not one of these programs is being legally used, with only one exception at this time. When you talk about maintaining HIPAA. One of the ones that we have here online, and I'll give you an example, Adobe Connect has 4 to 5 different versions of it. Only one, the enterprise level, meets the requirement. The other 4, the software, it doesn't include the other 4s that we've got here do have the software also, just like Adobe, but that software is not active and it's not always working unless you do what is called an electronic business agreement, or a BAA. That BAA is what ensures then that your company is, or your services when you supervise, are actually communicating in a confidential manner and are communicating in a way that maintains HIPAA. And I'm just curious, you don't have to say a word, but for those of us that are online, a show of hand of how many had heard of that before? Okay, Dr. Eldridge, thank you. It's something that we have to keep in mind, that we have a responsibility to protect, and we have a responsibility to keep that private. The issue also involves costs. It is not easy to establish and maintain these systems. It costs a lot of money. The bandwidth. I know that when we do our weekly group and individual supervisions, depending on where the student lives, the bandwidth makes a tremendous difference. We have students up in the country, in the Midwest, that experience a number of difficult moments trying to access and maintain their video. We also look at the programs. Of course, like I said, most of them are very easy to use and user-friendly, but we're also looking at the recording, the presentations, the limits on participants, which is not bad, as the standards, if I recall correctly, for group is no more than 6, or somewhere around 6, and it is 1 or 2 for dyads when we do individual supervision. The last area is the storage. People talk about we can drop the video, but again, unless we have the BAA, Dropbox is not secure. So while it presents a lot of opportunities for the future, and it offers us many things that we can do for supervision, and I'm a firm believer in it, at the same time, there are some technical considerations that we cannot go forward without taking into account. And I'm wondering too, how many schools actually prepare and teach their students, doctoral students, as they go forward into becoming professors, these items. So for the next area, what I would like to do is to ask to look at the two sides considerations that there are benefits and there are drawbacks to having a program that uses online supervision. It's convenient, it's cost effective, tutorials are available. The benefits are, the drawbacks of course are cost. The other one is what happens if a crisis happens? What happens if the student experiences a situation or we have to address another event? So that has some implications across state lines, has some implications across geographical distances. And then the technical experience. Every semester, I swear, I think we spend the first 2 sessions always trying to learn how to use the system. After that, everybody becomes proficient. But it's something that maybe, because we know we're going to expect that, rather than starting the students right away in supervision, those first 2 weeks, having some sort of exercises that they can do to improve their ability to use and to know and to manipulate the system. At this time, some of the users' experience will be shared, beginning with Dr. Mwendwa.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Nils. So as the title suggested, this is focusing specifically on counselor educators like ourselves, and also counselor educators in training. This afternoon or morning for you, Maria, I'm really privileged that we have a mix of both. So hopefully part of our conversation this afternoon can have both sides of that. So I have worked with both Nils and Maria in their teaching internship classes for their doctoral programs. And so some of actually what we'll be discussing today stems from them. But my first bullet point here in terms of just one of my own experiences and a benefit I see to virtual supervision is just this effective use of time. So Natasha, I noticed you had a little person walking behind you a little while ago, and I'm smiling because I have 2 little ones that I had to block this for a minute and take care of while Daddy took care of them. And so our time is so precious. I think the older I get now, being a mom and the multiple apps that we have, time is so important. And so being able to very quickly adjust and move into this role of a supervisor, this modality allows for that. And so that's one of my biggest pieces in this. And same too, because I'm working many times with different doctoral students who are teaching their classes. And so we're able to accomplish a lot, still learn a great deal, but certainly use our time wisely on this one. The diversity piece, I think I'll start with a story. In my doctoral program, so I went to Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. And for one of my years, my third year, so I did a whole 4 years, everybody does it differently, but my 3rd year, I had the privilege of doing a 1-year volunteer service in Malawi, the southern part of Africa. And while I was there, my professor, Dr. Remley, was my supervisor. And so talking about some of the things, Nils, you addressed in regards to bandwidth, and sometimes we didn't have electricity there, and I had to spend so much money being in Africa trying to find secure or just internet that was working. Many times it would result to using the phone for our supervision. And so talk about pros and cons. I mean, I've been kind of used to being able to sit in this format and share a screen and talk about that. Now I had to rely on the phone. However, it still allowed me, and it's one of my favorite parts of having gone through that program, was it allowed me as a doc student at the time to still feed something in me professionally and personally, which was international counseling. So it's a research interest. But the fact that I was able to still complete my coursework because I have supervision whilst I'm in Malawi was a gem. And so I think when we think about diversity, places that are rural or people who have multiple roles that they're playing, professionally speaking, moms or other tasks, we are able to open up in a way as the field of counseling and counselor education and really capture an audience that is going to outgrow our profession, so to say. So in a way, I almost see that as an advocacy piece. Because then we are reaching those people who are diverse. We're able to still offer quality education through this modality, if that makes sense. So those are some of mine. I don't know if anybody had a comment or a question about that, or if shared any of those two experiences, Dr. Eldridge or Natasha, before the others jump in.
I don't think I would have anything to add except that I totally agree with the points that you've made, about how that can make things possible across worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Helping students continue on their path, that's so valuable.
Yes. Can you hear me? Okay, good. For my part, what I want to talk about with the feedback is that I noticed that when it comes to face-to-face supervision, sometimes we can allow the moment to lose track of what's happening with the person that's right in front of us. And that we have to be attentive, but we pick it up. It's something that happens to all of us because we're looking at cues in the bodies, the sound, the behavior, and we're all trained well enough to be able to attend to that. But what I did notice in online supervision, you have to increase your attention. You cannot be diverted from what is going on for very long because the video doesn't allow for that 3-dimension that you normally have to be able to interpret the person's body language, the movement, what is going on. So in some ways, it improves quality of feedback because you are going to be able to pay extra attention to nuances in the voice, nuances in the face. And in most cases, like us, we just simply show our faces. There's not a whole body look. So that helps. So that is kind of an interesting thing that we have to deal with, but it does improve feedback because we're more attentive to what the person has to say. And I found that to be a plus. Not only that, but if the session is recorded, then it provides us an opportunity to and the student even an opportunity to go back over it and be able to see things that we might have missed the first time. Unless there's any questions, it will be Maria.
Thank you, Nils. So my experience has been varied. One of the things when I first started this program was really, for me, was convenience. Because, I work full-time, I have a family, I have a lot of things going on. So I needed to be in a program that would be convenient for me, that I could do it maybe at different times of the day, and I could connect with my professor so that we could coordinate a time. It didn't have to be a certain office hours, so it was so convenient. And so going into this program, that was one of the main things. And I found that through video conferencing and the video supervision, that was the case, because I share, the professor would say, hey, when are you guys available? And we would coordinate our times, and then so that it would be convenient for all of us, and we would get together in that way. So I really, really, really appreciated that. It also eliminates some of the anxiety because of what you said earlier, Nils, that you only see my face and up here. So there's like a barrier, so you're a little bit more relaxed, especially when you're getting feedback. When you're getting feedback, there's a lot of apprehension, or you have to show videos and stuff. So that those two things have helped me to really appreciate the programs and what they do and how we could use them even moving forward. So.
Thanks, Maria. We'll talk about some best practices, and some of these are going to be really connected to some things that we have done in terms of my own supervision as well as Nils and Maria's, but certainly feel free to refer to ACES. ACES has some best practices on supervision in general, but they have, I think, maybe 2 points specifically on virtual supervision. But I think it's really important to communicate your expectations very early. Going back to something that we refer to with a person who's a digital native versus someone who's not, or even some of the things that, Nils, you were talking about that get really technical. What do I expect of my supervisee? And yes, we know that in general in terms of supervision, but this is, I think the difference here, you're thinking is, I am working with a counselor educator in training who is teaching another individual. And so this obviously, yes, the parallel process, but the need for them to practice, feel comfortable as they begin to engage their own students, whether it's undergrad or a master's level. And so for us in this situation, the minute they get assigned to me, my teachers or co-professors, I'll send out, I have kind of this long document that's very detailed on what it is that I expect of them. Everything from how the announcements need to look like, what I want in there. And we actually do spend some time, kind of jumping to the second here, but spend time on Blackboard. You think about it, I mean, we are training future counselor educators. The reality of them being educators, if they've not had experience teaching in that format, is they don't know the behind the scenes of what Blackboard looks like. Blackboard is our, I guess, our management system, but Canvas or whatever other tool you're using. And so spending time to actually show, this is how the grade center looks like. Please don't delete that, or please don't say, if you happen to say send all, it goes to everybody and my boss, and, kind of those nuances. And so, yes, expectations, but providing this, this step-by-step tutorials if you can attain those. One thing that's been really helpful for me here is collaborating a great deal with our IT department. I'll go to, and I have gone to the IT help desk and kind of identified what tutorials are out there. Many times I've been blessed, like with Maria and Nils, they've been online students for a while and have been using computers a long time. But in the past, I recall having a doc student who wasn't as, quote, advanced, if I could use that language, and I sent them a tutorial. So for them, yes, we talk about it verbally during supervision, but then they could sit in their own, kind of learn at their own pace and practice those tools. You think about this confidence. I remember in my doc program, I was teaching residentially and online, and the first semester you're sitting there with a real class and you're thinking, okay, yes, I heard the fake it till you make it, and you can do that, but at some point you're thinking, I don't know how this works. And it's one thing to say, yes, I'm not, we can play off some things, but I think there's something to be said about how our students see us and our confidence of knowing that we're making an effort and really learning. And some of that is really personal, but then it's really a professional piece. But at best possible, giving your counselor educators and training the information that they need and allowing for time for them to practice. And that's been a really, I think, a significant step for me. Nils, you kind of alluded to this earlier with, how many doc students are really kind of taught some of those nuances of teaching a class. And I'm actually looking in August or in the fall, I'll be teaching a doctoral class, a teaching class. And this is one of the pieces we're intentionally adding because of this very topic. Just what is Blackboard, or what does this look like, and who's in IT? Who do I need to know to prepare them to best engage their students in the future well. This one about just having an FAQ page or an FAQ folder, frequently asked questions. Sometimes as people rotate, they're asking the same exact questions, and really there are no stupid questions in this scenario because everybody is in such a different place, different continuums. take different places on that continuum. And so whether it's where's my opening button, where is the emails, where's those pieces, really important. Or specifically in terms of supervision, they're uploading their own teaching experiences that we're going to be discussing that week. What format are we using for that? So I've found that it's been helpful to have folks inform me, and what happens is normally I've tweaked my expectations page and added feedback from past supervisees and shared that with them. That's how that's looked like for me very specifically. So it's not particularly just FAQs. I'm answering those questions in my expectations/syllabus document for them. Okay. And I kind of talked about this last pair. This semester, I am privileged to co-teach with Maria and another doc student. Maria, you kind of identified yourself as a digital immigrant. I think your colleague might identify themselves as more of a digital native, but that's been helpful for them, for all of us to come together and have everybody's strengths be highlighted and learn from each other. I have two siblings who are both in IT. Sometimes I've resulted to say that they've enabled me not to maybe learn as much, but going back to the ACA Code of Ethics, and this we'll kind of jump into implications here. Going back to the ACA Code of Ethics, we are mandated to grow, to push ourselves, to learn this. I mean, now I look at my nephews and the things that they're helping fix, and or even specifically, even I live here in Central Virginia, our public school systems, they're starting right with computers from 3rd grade. And so you think about, and I'm not particularly that older, but even for me, I have to challenge myself to continue to understand how to talk their language, so to say. Yeah, any best practices from Natasha, Dr. Eldridge, anything else you can chime in on this before we move to the next one?
Well, Joy, I love what you said with all of these. And I was thinking a lot about this second level, the step-by-step tutorials, and how that is just such it's such an important bridge from what it might look like if we were all face-to-face, and bringing that sense of contact with the instructor to the online forum when we might not be able to be available, for 5 hours every night to accommodate people across different time zones or work schedules. But given providing those video tutorials, it does still give that sense of my professor's available to me. And even if it's not live, I mean, ideally, maybe it's a live optional meeting or, introductory meeting, orientation meeting of this is what we're going to do, but we're going to record it so you can come back to it. I just think in online learning, we are so often trying to translate the community that we get in live teaching to the convenience and accessibility that we offer in online learning. And that just seems like a really nice way to make that translation. So that was a great point.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that. I think it's the piece where, for me, you're right. I've had students in the past who've come up and said, remember in week 2 or week 1 when you sent this? I pulled it up again, and yes, it allowed me to, it's like the self-assessment, this monitoring piece, or just kind of checking things off. So yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments before we leave from anyone? Okay. Hang on, Maria, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was going to say, for me, being the online student, that really made a difference for me when I had the videos, because it did provide a connection to the professor, just like being there in front of them versus just seeing an announcement, and that's all I knew of the professor. But it provides a context of when you see the professor on video, you get to know a little bit about them. And so it was really helpful, and I did appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that feedback, Maria. Mm-hmm. All right, well, we'll touch on implications here as we'll begin to wrap up here. We've kind of hammered already on this first point, the need to remain technologically current. It's not an option. It truly isn't, just in light of where the world is going. And I have appreciated, practically speaking, what does this mean for departments? I've appreciated departments who are, yes, are acknowledging the times, are recognizing that, yes, we have an ACA Code of Ethics that mandates this, but really that is funding that movement, that advancement. Nils, you talked about cost. So yes, you have online students, but what does that mean when it comes to purchasing the next, do you know how they have like 0.0 something, point what? I'm sure Nils is probably a technical name for that, as I embarrass myself. But really, I think it's departments who make a choice to say, if we are gonna give our students this, then we need to be able to fund it. Or even just ensuring that there's strong IT. So from an administrative perspective, administrators are able to speak up during those meetings and say, actually, no, for example, in our department, we were specifically assigned an IT liaison for the School of Behavioral Sciences. So all of the faculty now call one individual, which is excellent because he already kind of understands what our needs are, as opposed to just this blind call help desk IT, somebody might know what I'm talking about. So it's those little pieces, but I think it's part of that bigger, the larger narrative here in terms of just advancing the profession and advocating for their profession. So highlighting this ACA Code of Ethics, again, coming back to what does this mean for administrator? What does this mean for me as a counselor educator? What does this mean for me putting on the hat of a student? All the different pieces. If it's a mandate for me to prepare, then case in point with this specific conference, which I love. I'd not heard about this prior, but I love the fact that we're able to do that. Here we are. Natasha, I'm sorry, and you did tell us, where are you right now?
I'm actually in Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach. Oh, yeah. Next to the beach. It's getting warm. Okay. Virginia Beach. How about you, Dr. Eldridge?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Denver. Okay, great. I was born in Denver. TMI. Okay. TMI. Okay. But isn't it interesting that with all of us at different places, we've all been able to learn from one another. And so it's one thing to say, going back to the next one, but thinking about ACA Code of Ethics and what the mandate is, for all of us, we can grow professionally speaking because of this conference. So I think it's things like this exactly that are helping us advance in essence, also abide to that though. I think there definitely needs to be more research as far as supervision and virtual supervision specifically. We found some information out there, generally speaking, regarding supervision in other disciplines, specifically for counseling, especially in light of the statistics that Maria talked about earlier. There's so many programs that are online right now. Well, what does this look like for us in our field? And to continue to put our stamp on that. This last implication is just thinking about how I see a theme already in all our implications here. The more we are advocating for the profession, the more then we're being tasked to think about, how do I allow for others who don't have access to education or resources, technologically speaking, how do I do that? How do we continue to do that? And I used my example earlier for having been in Malawi for a year, and I didn't waste a year. Okay, yes, it impacted me professionally, personally, to be in Southern Africa for that long of a time. I didn't waste my year because they counted credit. Why? Because I met all the other requirements, including that supervision element. And so I think for all of us, regardless, of the different hats that we wear as we think about our profession, just to continue to speak up when we need to, or continue to sharpen our own individual skills, and grow with one another. Any other implications that you all can think of?
I can't think of an additional one, but I just was thinking, especially with these top 2 points here from the administrative side, when you're trying to convince your administration, when a program is trying to convince the larger administration that we need to have the top-notch platforms, and we need to pay, for maybe the extra services, and making sure we've got that BAA in there, being able to ground that in, nope, these are our KCREP standards, this is the ACA Code of Ethics, and making sure that we're very well versed and understand how those expectations and standards can be used to advocate with our administrations that may not be looking at it in that context. So those are really good points.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. We can ground that. Thankfully, not all professions actually can say that. I realize now, more work in the sector, that we do have we can go back to research, but yes, ACA Code of Ethics, and certainly our KCREP standards, certainly. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about throughout this process is we have standards for supervision, but those standards were developed face-to-face, not online. And we've been wondering, are there any significant number of efficacy studies that can actually measure the outcomes? And that was another implication that we had from today, which is, what are we going to do to know that what we're doing is not only nice, but it's effective?
Absolutely, Nils. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Dr. Eldridge, did you?
I was just going to ask the 3 of you, is that your next step then, is to run a research study to show that?
Thank you. We actually did kind of talk about already a conceptual piece of some sort, but certainly the actual, doing research on this topic. So yes, thank you for that. I think more work, which is great. I love research. The 2 of them are in the middle of dissertation, so they're probably not thinking anything else right now. So yesterday when I brought up some of this, I'm like, okay, after you finish your dissertation, we have some work.
Put it on the list. Yep. Future research.
Absolutely. Definitely, there's need for it. I concur.
Right.
Yeah, because technology is not going anywhere. So really finding out what works, what doesn't, and what's the best practices as you do the supervision would be terrific research.
And, with computers, I want to give you a time perspective. Back in 1981, when I bought my first computer, I had to get a student loan to be able to afford it. We're talking $5,200 with taxes for a black and green screen, one little floppy drive, and one of those very noisy 9-pin printers. And everybody thought I was crazy. And I even learned to program. I learned to do a lot of things because we couldn't go out and buy the software. I wrote my first database. I mean, there's a lot of things I wrote in those days. And people laugh. But then over the years, the return that it's had on my professional careers has been fantastic. It's opened doors. It's kept me employed. And it's not a wasted resource, but it is something that both individually as well as professionally, we have to realize computers are here to stay.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nils. Actually, what you just said reminded me of recently on the listserv, I noticed there was a professor who's, I think, had a question for everyone asking whether they could recommend a text because he was getting ready to teach an online class. I don't know if anybody else saw that, but I remember thinking, here we are talking about this. Our students, doctoral students needing to prepare not only to do e-counseling, which in and of itself is an element to it, but as counselor educators, what does that look like? So I appreciated that, yes, they're thinking about the inquiry. Actually, I think only one person responded unless, I went back, I didn't go back and check on it, but I didn't see a lot of responses in regards to that. So yes, and I'm glad to hear you, right, Nils? Yes, that's kept you busy. And Nils is the one, between Maria and I, Maria, I think you can say this. There's some things Nils has said, we've gone, that's right, Nils, good. He's taught us, and that's the whole point. We get to challenge one another. Well, that's all I had. We have some references for our study or for our presentation. Were there any other questions or any other comments before we end our session?
I just want to say I am like watching it. I learned a lot. Like I said, I'm a master's student. I'll be going into my practicum, so I'm looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
It has given me an insight on expectations that I should have of my supervisors, because I will have virtual supervision as well as on-ground supervision. So just the differences and the nuances of each. So I appreciate this presentation.
Thank you, Natasha, and all the best as you start your practicum soon.
Thank you.
And I'm glad that you've been able to glean something. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, this was a lovely presentation, very timely and appropriate. And like you all said, it's not going anywhere. So we need to be sharpening our edges around this. So very, very nicely done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you for joining us. I believe I clicked on the chat, the group chat, and I think Ms. Jennifer had sent a survey for all of us. That's one thing I noticed on there. But thank you again for your feedback, and let us know if we can interact in the future, and we appreciate you spending time with us today.
Yes, it was so nice to meet you all.
Good to meet you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That means